The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
In the aftermath to the Boston Marathon bombing, we're now starting to get a number of different stories that will be followed over some period of time. The trial of Zahar Tsarnaev will be one of those stories. And another story that's emerged over the last couple of days is that of where will the remains of Tamerlan Tsarnaev be buried? Now, the funeral director in charge of Tamerlan Tsarnaev, Peter Steffen, said he hasn't been able to find a cemetery in Massachusetts who's even willing to take the body, right? He says he could ask the city of Cambridge, where Tsarnaev lived, to provide a burial plot. And then if Cambridge turns him down, he'll talk to state officials. And his uncle, the uncle Ruslan Tsarny, said, "I'm dealing with the logistics. A dead person must be buried." This is, of course, the uncle who came up from Maryland. We saw an interview with that uncle during the entire interim period between the bombing and when they were eventually killed and caught, respectively. And one of the latest pieces of the story, which I think it gives us a lot of questions that we could kind of discuss amongst ourselves, is that a Yale Divinity School graduate actually said, "Hey, I'd be willing to donate one of my burial plots at a Mount Carmel cemetery to the family of Tamerlan Tsarnaev." And he said, "I have these 4 plots. My parents are buried in 2. I already have a plot for myself, and I would be willing to do it." Now, here's the thing. He says, "The only condition is that I do it in memory of my mother, who taught Sunday school at the Mount Carmel Congregational Church for 40 years and taught me to love thine enemy." This is Paul Douglas Keene, who has a blog called The Anti-Yale. He says, "I own the plot. No one can refuse me access." He's 68 years old. He's a retired public school teacher who lives in Vermont. And the cemetery in question is Central Burying Grounds on Whitney Avenue in Mount Carmel. What do you think about this, Lewis, right? I mean, he says, this is a person. I don't care that he's a pariah. Everybody deserves a burial, so I'm willing to make the offer. I also think it would be a nice thing to do in memory of my mother, who did teach me, love thine enemy. I don't care how despicable and hateful his behavior was in his lifetime. He's dead, and his body deserves a resting place. And he says, this is the Christian thing to do. The real Christian thing to do here is provide a burial plot.
I'd say this is probably the only real Christian we've talked about in a long time.
So you agree with this? You don't think that because of the counter argument would be, listen,
no, I
this
mean,
is a guy who
I'm not saying I agree with it. I'm completely neutral on this. I don't think burying the body or not burying the body would matter. I understand why people would not want the body
near
in certain places near them.
Exactly.
But I mean, to me, it's just decaying matter at this point.
Natan, do you think this is more about the details, the minutia of what Tamerlan Tsarnaev did while he was alive, or more about what it says about those who still are alive in terms of how this is handled?
Well, it's all a symbolic thing. I mean, this guy is getting criticized because he's making a symbolic move. It's like Lewis is saying, there's a practical issue here at stake, but the guy isn't really proposing a practical solution. It's a symbolic one. It's to say that no matter who this guy is, he deserves a normal burial, and no one's willing to, go and actually volunteer for it. On the other hand, this guy wasn't an American citizen, I believe, so I don't know if it's possible to send his body back to Russia, or whether they would even accept him. Maybe
I
they
actually
wouldn't
don't
accept
remember. I don't remember whether Tamerlan was a citizen and Zahar was close to being, or vice versa.
No. Zahar is clearly the citizen.
Right. Yeah. If he wasn't a citizen, why would he be? Yeah. Okay. So fair enough. Yeah.
So that's it.
I don't really care if he gets buried in a Christian cemetery or if they throw him to the vultures. I really don't care either way.
But you wouldn't be angry for the guy for offering with this guy for.
Am I
offering
mad at this guy? No, I don't. Not at all.
Rick Perry is urging the Boy Scouts to oppose gay pop culture in the same way Sam Houston resisted slavery. Rick Perry saying being anti-gay is the same essentially as being anti-slavery. Here's an interview that Rick Perry did, Republican governor of Texas. And during this interview, this was on the Stand with Scouts Sunday webcast of the Family Research Council. Sounds like a titillating show. This is what he had to say.
And principles have worked for a century now. And for pop culture to come in and try to tear that up because it just happens to be the the flavor of the month, so to speak, and to tear apart one of the great organizations that have served millions of young men, helped them to become men and to become great fathers, and that is just not appropriate. And frankly, I hope the American people will stand up and say, not on my watch. As you see right over my shoulder right there, there's a picture on the wall. I'm in the library of the Texas governor's mansion, and the greatest governor that ever served this state was Sam Houston. And from this library that I speak, he made a powerful decision that cost him his governorship. He was against slavery, and he stood up and very passionately said, Texas does not need to leave the Union over this issue of slavery. We need to stay. We've only been, he thought, a terrible decision. And he was right, but it cost him his governorship.
Yeah, so and then he goes on to say the Boy Scouts need to also stand up the same way Sam Houston did. So a few things here. Number one, he refers to gay equality as the flavor of the month. That's going to seem absurd in a few years. In fact, it'll be like if we now thought back from people saying interracial marriage is the flavor of the month. Let's wait for this thing to blow over. This is not going to be something that is here to stay. That's how that comment will be seen. I don't know how many years from now, but
well,
hopefully
it'll kind of
sooner.
be reversed, right? I mean, opposition to it is really the flavor of the month.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah. Opposition to it is what's going to pass. Now, here's the other thing. Being against slavery is not like being against allowing gay people in organizations. Sam Houston took the moral high ground by standing against bigotry. In his particular case, it was racial bigotry. Rick Perry is a bigot who is citing, in part, the Bible as the moral authority, as the catalyst for his hate, just like the slave owners that were opposed by Sam Houston. So this is kind of one of those reversal projection examples where really the reality is actually the opposite of what Rick Perry is talking about.
Yeah, well, that's normally the case with Rick Perry.
This is the equivalent. He's essentially standing up for slavery. If we want to compare Rick Perry's position to Sam Houston with slavery in its on, Rick Perry is taking the position of standing up for slavery, not against it.
Well, I give him credit. I actually agree with Rick Perry on one thing. It's probably the first thing I've ever agreed with him on, which is that Texas shouldn't have seceded from the Union. So the fact that he's saying that and not, walking the secessionist line, it makes me happy.
Yeah, there you go. It's a different way of looking at it, I guess.
Of course, this is also the guy who kept that rock on his ranch.
N-word head.
Yeah, that was it.
Yeah. Pat Robertson says, just like murderers and rapists can change, gays can also change. He was reacting to a case in Ecuador where a politician was found to have violated his country's electoral code, which had a prohibition on discrimination. He made anti-gay remarks, the politician in Ecuador, and that violated the electoral code because it was a discriminatory remark. Pat Robertson had the following to say about it, likening people who are gay to somebody who has killed another person.
Somebody to say that a homosexual can change, that somehow is a hate crime. It is a hate crime to say somebody can change their sexual preference, that's a hate crime. That's what's going to happen, ladies and gentlemen. That man's freedom of speech is being taken away, and the idea that anybody who has ministered to thousands of people, as undoubtedly he has and others have in that church in Ecuador, know very well that the power of God can change people's orientation. A murderer can change. A rapist can change. A thief can change. That's what the gospel is all about.
There you go, Louis. I mean, why? It's just so simple. I love it when Pat Robertson breaks it down simply. People who do things like murdering can change. And being gay is also something you can change, much the same way. I'm actually going to mark down exactly what he said there. Just like a murderer, gay people can change. And now when I talk to people about this stuff, I'll just know that Pat Robertson made it very clear that it's very simple.
Well, like you said, that's what the gospel is all about. And that is what the gospel is all about. And if you believe that some guy put two of every animal on a boat, then you know what? I don't see why this couldn't fly.
Two women loving each other is like robbing money from a bank. I see the connection. It makes perfect sense to me. Two men loving each other is like killing someone. Yeah, why not? Doesn't it make more sense, though, to compare a group of homophobes beating someone to death for being gay to murder as opposed to just loving another man, Natan?
That's hate crime. That's a hate crime right there. You're infringing on his free speech rights. I don't get this thing. He says it's a hate crime. It's not a hate crime. Like, what is he talking about? It's hate speech in the sense that it's hateful and it's stupid to suggest what he's suggesting, but I don't see why he has to bring the First Amendment into it.
As we know, Lewis, women in full-time year-round jobs make 77 cents for every dollar that men make. And at a town hall meeting in New Hampshire, Republican Senator Kelly Ayotte, who voted against equal pay for women, was asked by a woman in the audience, why did you vote against it? Let's hear the question, and then you've got to hear the answer, because it's such a simplistic, a buffoon answer that she gives that we have to analyze it bit by bit. Here's the question Senator Kelly Ayotte was asked. Why did you vote against equal pay for women?
My grandmother, who was extremely intelligent woman, trained many men that then became her boss and so on and so forth. Never received a pension, never really was paid what she was worth. And I was disappointed that you voted against the Equal Pay Act, but maybe there was something in the bill that you thought would be detrimental to the economy or whatever. But I was curious if you could explain your philosophy about equal pay and how maybe you could suggest something that we could all agree upon so that women would stop making 75 cents for every dollar a man makes. Yes.
All right, so there's the question. Fair question, Lewis, would you say?
I think so.
Okay, so let's hear the answer from Kelly Ayotte, and just be ready for this, okay? Because it is, it's truly shocking.
The law that you were talking about, we have existing laws, Title VII, Lilly Ledbetter, a whole host of existing protections in place that I believe enforce and provide that people doing equal jobs are certainly in this country should receive equal pay. So that bill, in my view, didn't add, in fact, it created a lot of additional burdens that I think it would have been hard to make it more difficult for job creators to create jobs. And ultimately, what we need for our economy to grow is more jobs for everyone, more opportunity for everyone. I've seen opportunities continue to open up for women. There needs to be more. We only have 20 women in the Senate right now. I'm looking forward to the day when there's 50 women in the Senate, because obviously 20 is a historic number, and we're glad to see that progress, but there's a lot more we can do in terms of women having opportunities. But the reason I voted against that specific bill is that I looked at it, and there were already existing laws that need to be enforced and can be enforced, and I didn't feel like adding that layer was going to help us better get at the equal pay issue.
There you go. We have enough laws. We've got enough laws on that. I don't need to put more laws. There's essentially like a fixed limit of laws. There's just a number of laws where it's enough laws on equal pay. Let's just create jobs. This is a very casual version of just redirecting to something else.
Right.
We've got laws, most of which I would have opposed had I had the chance to vote on them, is essentially the reality here. So we've got enough. And I would actually say, if we have enough laws and you're just so against new laws and layers and all this stuff, why do we even need Kelly Ayotte as a lawmaker? With her reasoning, there's nothing else for her to do. That's it.
Unless she just wants to get rid of laws.
Right. Well, that would be the next step.
Or she has to stay in office to vote against them.
This, Natan, we have enough laws that we're not enforcing. So I didn't, and by the laws which she also opposed, it's just so patently absurd.
Well, women should be paid, they should receive equal pay for equal work, but I think that Kelly Ayotte is not producing equal work
to
a lot of other senators, so she should be paid a lot less. She is probably by far the least capable and overall dumbest senator to go under the radar in that Tea Party 2010 sweep.
Yeah.
And her vote on the gun background bill, this, and a number of other things, and her general inability to answer questions coherently, hopefully will result in her getting ousted in 2016.
You would think that New Hampshire would realize that this is not a competent woman.
It's a neighbor of ours. I'm embarrassed.
Yeah, it is embarrassing. Hey, on today's bonus show, this is huge. Lewis is going hardcore camping in the middle of nowhere. On the bonus show today, we will talk about why he is doing this. What types of rations will he bring? Will he be bringing sanitary relief buckets? What are the logistics of Lewis's camping trip? All of this is happening on the bonus show. To get the bonus show, davidpakman.com/membership. But if you want to take advantage of the special offer, davidpakman.com/May13, you've got the option of a free David Pakman Show bumper sticker or puzzle or both with your yearly membership. davidpakman.com/May13. We'll take a break. A lot more coming up. Stay with us.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. Welcome back to the David Pakman Show.
Our membership program is made possible in part by liberalbias.com. If you're finding yourself concerned about the amount of liberal bias in the world, find out about the Liberal Bias Index at liberalbias.com. And, of course, the liberal bias threat level, which is of utmost importance, Lewis.
You got it.
Today's new member of the day, Jeremy Corvellis. Jeremy, thanks for being a David Pakman Show member. You are one of many reasons, all of our members, why we stay on the air. Thanks to everybody who has signed up, particularly over the last month, Lewis. It's been a strong month for the membership program.
I like it.
So the Eggman, we're giving away these bumper stickers with our May 13 promotion, davidpakman.com/May 13. And the Eggman sent in a picture of his, it looks like a Chevy Blazer with a David Pakman Show bumper sticker on it, which is huge. And it looks like he said he wanted several bumper stickers because he has a number of vehicles. And it looks like looks like a red Ford Mustang in addition to the Blazer. So he's got at least two of his vehicles seem to consume a lot of gas. That we can be sure of.
So?
Yeah, no, it's fine. It's just interesting. David Pakman Show bumper sticker on gas guzzlers.
It happens.
Yeah, people do what they can. You know, he's apparently likes to feel the power of those American vehicles.
That's okay.
Some people do. Yeah. Absolutely. So there's the bumper sticker on the Eggman's vehicle. Thanks to him for sending that in. You can get your own. Go to davidpakman.com/May 13. You sign up for a yearly membership, and you can choose either or both of the free gifts we have going on. We have the 1,000-piece Barack Obama puzzle, Lewis. Hours of fun. I've read. I've read about puzzles. I've never actually put a puzzle together.
You haven't?
No, I'm kidding. I work on them all the time.
Do you?
And with my little sister. And David Pakman Show bumper stickers available in white or black. And you can, when you go to davidpakman.com/May 13, you can choose, I want both the bumper sticker and the puzzle, or I just want the puzzle, or I just want the bumper sticker, however you want it. And if you prefer a T-shirt, a David Pakman Show T-shirt, there's an option for that as well. So please check that out, davidpakman.com/May 13. And please, everybody who's gotten the bumper sticker so far, send in pictures of wherever you put it. You know, did you put it on the back of your MacBook Air? Or did you put it on the back of your Prius?
Or on the back of your Bentley.
Or on the back of your Bentley, or on the back of your Mustang, as the case may be. We would love to get a bunch of those pictures. Let's talk about today in show history. What were we talking about years ago today on the show? 1 year ago, we were talking about the Secret Service prostitution scandal, and we actually had Eric O'Neill on the show. He is the guy who, remember that movie Breach?
Mm-hmm.
Ryan Phillippe plays Eric O'Neill, the former FBI agent who actually was involved in the catching of Robert Hansen, who had been spying for the KGB. He joined us a year ago to talk about the Secret Service prostitution scandal. That's still one of my favorite interviews. I really like him as a guest.
Yeah,
we should have him back on. 2 years ago, we were having to deal with conspiracy theories of Osama bin Laden having not really been killed or having been killed a long time ago and held for a politically expedient moment. 2 years ago today, we were talking about that because it had just been a few days after Osama bin Laden had been killed. And 3 years ago today, we were talking about the that infamous Glenn Miller interview, which turned into one of, at the time, the most watched and most listened to interviews. That is Glenn Miller, the incredible racist who came on the show and said that I'm incredibly kike-alike. I'd never heard that term before. And also that he has identified me as a Jew liar who has the power of the media because at the time we were on 50 small non-commercial radio stations. Classic interview.
Right, and his entire his campaign slogan was "It's the Jews, stupid."
Exactly.
Yeah.
Just a take, I guess, on James Carville's Bill Clinton slogan, "It's the economy, stupid."
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So 3 years ago today, if you haven't seen that interview, you've got to check it out. It's a classic. The National Rifle Association decided to ban this. I guess colloquially, it's being called the Bleeding Obama target. This is a target that looks like President Obama. They call it the Rocky Zombie. You can see it here over my shoulder if you're watching if you're watching rather than listening. And of course, they deny that it is actually President Obama. They sell the company is called Zombie Industries, and they sell these three-dimensional, life-size targets that actually bleed when you shoot them. And at the NRA convention, they had one that looked a lot like Obama, and it was all of a sudden gone on what I think was the last day of the convention on Sunday. And Zombie Industries actually said someone from the NRA came by and asked us to remove it. They thought it looked too much like President Obama. And when asked if the Obama likeness was deliberate, the worker said, "Let's just say I gave my Republican father one for Christmas." Ho-ho! They're very good at subtle parody and joking, aren't they, over there at that Zombie Industries
Yeah,
booth?
definitely.
And another booth worker said to people who had gathered around, they're just scared some liberal reporter will come by and start bitching. But, you know, he does look very familiar.
It's that's uncanny, yeah.
The model is named Rocky. Like I said, he's still available for purchase at the booth, but is hidden from sight. And this actually, let's put up, Natan, if we can find the picture where there's a notable gap between, you can just see with the red arrow where he's gone. Rocky Zombie is noticeably gone there. You can also see a clown, a green guy, someone that looks kind of like Osama bin Laden, and then the one on the right, I can't really tell what that is. But anyway, a lot happening over there at Zombie Industries. That's for sure. And you have to also remember that there are other Obama likenesses in the NRA convention. There's an Obama vampire with a stake in his heart, which you can see at the Conan Inc. booth. Do we have that one, Natan, to show people?
Yeah, I'm putting them all up.
Okay, so we have the Obama zombie with a stake in his heart, and then we also have one that's at the Ops Gear booth, which also looks like President Obama. By the way, a lot of the people shooting at the Obama lookalike feel that President Obama is dividing this country. Isn't that ironic?
Yeah. Clearly, the NRA is just concerned with Second Amendment rights. Yeah.
Man, it's just, do you believe, Natan, that all of these are just coincidences?
No, well, no, of course not. I mean,
okay. Just making, because that's what we hear. Hey, it's just a coincidence that it looks identical to Obama.
Well, we just quoted the guy who designed it, saying that he gave his conservative father a Christmas present.
But that's
right?
an off the. That doesn't mean it was designed to look like Obama.
Okay, well then, how do you interpret that statement?
No, I interpret it the same way you do. I'm just saying, what do you think of when you hear that it's all a big coincidence?
It's not a coincidence. It's part of a very specific idea that Obama is somehow fundamentally changing both the power of the presidency, the nature of the country, that he's violating the Constitution, and it's really all just a front for what no one wants to admit, or very few people want to admit, which is that he's the first black president. His middle name's Hussein. We all know this. This is nothing new, and this is seen as a threat by the white conservative establishment.
Oh yeah, that's that is definitely, that's a scared group, isn't it? The white conservative establishment. You'd think from the amount that they talk about being scared that they were really being oppressed in this country.
Now, fear is what governs them.
Buford Rogers has been arrested. The FBI says that he was planning a terror attack in Minnesota, and that they were able to disrupt it by raiding his home and by arresting him. They said that he was holding a huge cache of explosives and weapons in a mobile home. The FBI said that potentially many, actually the word they used is several lives were potentially saved with the arrest of 24-year-old Buford Rogers. He was in court yesterday. The count is being a felon in possession of a firearm. Molotov cocktails, suspected pipe bombs, firearms, Whole bunch of stuff allegedly there, according to a court affidavit. Investigation is ongoing. I wonder, Lewis, I really do, if Buford Rogers had a less, good old boy, white-sounding name, if this story would have made more news in corporate media. Buford Rogers does not really fit the narrative of terrorism, even though officially this is being considered a domestic terrorism incident.
Right. Yeah, didn't get much coverage at all, did it? And definitely, had it been someone of with a bit darker complexion or with a Muslim name or you name it, I mean, it would have been a much bigger story.
Do you think that if somebody who was in a plot like this called, like we heard about this on indie media mostly, if the guy's name was Charles Philip Worthington III, who was involved in a failed terror plot, would it even be covered anywhere, or would it just? Come on. Charles Philip Worthington III. Who could ever commit a crime with that name?
That would be mental illness, lone wolf, and, open and close.
I know that when an immigrant does something like this, it's because they came from another country. It seems Buford himself was born here, but did you know his great-grandparents came from England generations ago? Clearly, this is an immigration issue, Natan.
Yeah, no, I think it is a fair point to bring up the immigration thing when you're talking about the Tsarnaev brothers. I'm not saying that I agree with the xenophobic turn that the right is taking. Obviously not, and I'm completely for legalization of all undocumented workers. However, I think it is an important part of the investigation going on with the Tsarnaevs that they came to the country, and clearly a part of their anti-American ideology or radicalization that they took, or at least the older brother took, was related to the fact that, their parents weren't successful immigrants. They were living back home in Russia. They weren't born in the U.S. Certainly, if they had been born here, if their parents had been successful immigrants economically and they had stayed, I don't know that you would have seen that happen. So it's definitely a relevant part of the discussion.
I'm not saying it's not relevant in that particular case. What really I'm referring to was the backlash on immigration reform that happened afterwards because of those two individuals, which was completely unwarranted.
Absolutely. That's a total shame, and it has nothing to do with the bill or what the bill would do.
All right, let's take a break. Facebook.com/David Pakman Show. Join us on Facebook. We have passed 20,000 Facebook likes. Incredible, Lewis, isn't it?
Wow. Yeah.
All right, we'll take a break. Plenty more coming up. Glad you're with us today.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. Welcome back to the David Pakman Show.
Joining me today is Eric Manirakiza. He's the managing director of African Public Radio and also a correspondent for Voice of America in Burundi. He is appealing to the U.S. to help end human rights violations in his country. And a lot of these violations, interestingly enough, involve journalists and media. Eric, it's really a pleasure to speak to you while you're briefly in the United States. Let's first tell our audience about the human rights violations that are taking place and specifically how this has been taken out on journalists.
Yes, the situation is dire. They are shooting at my journalists, beating them up and stealing their press recordings. So now they are going to pass a law which inconsistent with the Burundi's international human rights obligations and the constitution. So today, journalists are working in a very hostile environment because we have a government which doesn't tolerate freedom of expression, doesn't tolerate journalists and media, because in the country since 2010, we following the withdrawal of political opposition parties in the elections of 2010, the ruling party governs without an effective opposition. So opponents, people, members of political opposition have been killed. Human Rights Watch recorded about 160 people, but this number is not higher as it must be. These are people who have been recorded by media, especially African Public Radio. So they are trying to get rid of any dissident so they can stay in power, because media in Burundi denounce all these killings, and media, especially RPA, serves as social, economic, and legal assistance to ordinary people, because all the government agencies that should help people are corrupt or even don't exist. So media, people today in Burundi depend on media. That's why they want to shut up journalists and media.
So to put as fine a point on this as we can so our audience really understands, how does this work? In other words, a journalist maybe shows up somewhere to cover a story, and then they're identified as journalists, and then what happens? Who arrests them? Who beats them? How is this taking place?
Sometimes the government use police, national police.
Mm-hmm.
I can give a couple of examples. Last year, there is a team of my journalists who have been taken in hostage by police because they went to cover human rights violations in a slum in town. I have a journalist working in Bubanza. This is a district, one of the districts of Burundi, who have been beaten up by youth belonging to the ruling party. And these people, they terrorize other people who are not members of the ruling party. And even national police cannot stop their abuse. They behave like militias. And this reminds what happened in Rwanda. If you heard about Interahamwe, they started by terrorizing people, and after they decided to kill people. So this situation could happen again in Burundi. If I decided to launch my petition is to appeal the world to see what is happening in Burundi, so that international community can act today, because tomorrow is late. And I have another journalist, my correspondent, in the operating in the center of Burundi. One day, he woke up and he found human blood on the wall of his house. That was a kind of intimidation to intimidate him, because RPA is a grassroots radio. We take the grassroots opinion, and they don't like radio broadcast these things. Recently, a week ago, there is one journalist who was investigating on police guys extorting money from people.
Let me ask you this, Eric. Are you at risk when you're in Burundi? Do you worry about your personal safety? I mean, is there anything that prevents you from having the same fate as some of these individuals you're talking about? You're outspoken, you're trying to engage people and activate them. Are you at risk?
Absolutely. I'm at a big risk because I'm the boss of the radio station, and I give the editorial line to the radio station. And I have moved my family to US. They are now in search of political asylum, because in 2010, I myself have been targeted. I received death threats. They sent a guy working for the intelligence service at my office, and he had a gun. And after that, he went at my wife's office, and
wow.
and they told her that I was going to be killed. So the situation is not really good for journalists. If I'm staying there, it's because I'm a change agent, and I have to continue using radio station as a tool of peace and denounce these bad things happening so that the situation can be improved.
It's incredible, Eric. Can you tell people how they can find the petition?
Yes, the petition is on change.org, and when they sign, they should be sure that their signature is going through, because there are so many people who signed, but their signature didn't go through.
We've been speaking with Eric Manirakiza. He's the managing director of African Public Radio and correspondent for Voice of America in Burundi. Eric, people need to go to change.org. They need to sign the petition. And, it's really a pleasure to speak to you. And please stay safe as you can. And we hope to talk to you in the future once again.
Thank you very much for the time you gave me to talk about Burundi.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
Hey to everyone who's watching us from the I Love It When I Wake Up in the Morning and Barack Obama is President Facebook page. Check that out. Kellogg is facing a lot of anger on social media because of complaints that its Kashi brand of cereals doesn't live up to the billing it gets as natural on the ads and boxes, so on and so forth. And the controversy started last week after a Rhode Island grocery store put a note next to one of the Kashi items saying he is no longer selling the cereal because he found out that the brand used some genetically engineered non-organic ingredients, and then pictures of the note started popping up all over Facebook and all sorts of places. So the point of controversy is that the soy in Kashi cereals comes from soybeans that have a gene inserted to protect them from the herbicide Roundup, which kills weeds. Now, legally, nothing wrong has happened. What do I mean? Well, natural is not a term that is regulated the way organic is. If you see something that says USDA organic, that has a meaning. Now, how much value you put in that meaning depends on who you are, but it does at least have an established and regulated meaning. The term natural doesn't really have a meaning, right? I mean, natural is defined differently by whoever it is you're talking to. Kashi defines it as food that's minimally processed, made with no artificial colors, flavors, preservatives, or sweeteners. GMO soybeans, I guess, do not fall under that, loosely speaking, as defined by Kashi itself. Now, some consumers say they felt duped because they thought the cereal was organic and free from GMOs because it said natural. Now, if you're confusing natural with organic, that's not Kashi's fault. That I don't buy into at all. But I think it's a fair question to say, should natural be genetically modified? Again, natural is not regulated. I actually have known about Kashi's over-branding as something that they are not for a long time, and I don't buy any Kashi products myself. That being said, they're not doing anything illegal because natural is not a regulated term.
Right. You will often find that when you're looking at something that says all natural, you've got hydrogenated oils, corn syrup, all sorts of things that are perhaps derived from natural products.
Right. Again, if it doesn't say organic, it's not organic. And if it says natural, it really doesn't mean very much. You've got to
It
look
means
at,
absolutely nothing.
It essentially means nothing.
Yeah.
Rush Limbaugh is feuding with his syndicator, Cumulus Media, because of all those ad revenues that he lost over the Sandra Fluke slut boycott. he could actually lose Cumulus Media distribution altogether. This wouldn't mean that he's off the air. There would just be some interim period where he finds a new syndicator. It's still a profitable show, just less profitable than it was before he said Sandra Fluke was a slut. And a source that's close to Limbaugh says that he's considering leaving Cumulus Media when his contract ends at the end of this year, basically pulling his show off of one of the biggest syndicated platforms. Again, the stations that he's on would probably just go to whatever his new platform is. The real thing I take from this is that if Rush Limbaugh's show makes $200 million in a year instead of $400 million, Rush makes a few less millions, but a lot of people just lose their jobs altogether. So I actually think that it is good to pull advertising from Rush Limbaugh, and I completely agree with that. I think the boycott has worked. It has removed a ton of money, but ultimately, Rush can live with a few less millions. And this is just the unfortunate thing about boycotts sometimes, and they work and I support it. There are people who will lose their jobs altogether who have nothing to do with the message on Rush Limbaugh's show because of those boycotts, and it's just the reality. It just is what it is.
Yeah, that's unfortunate, but I mean, if he ends up being on less stations as a result, has less airtime maybe, is that worth it? Does that equal out?
I don't know how to run the equation. If 10 people at Cumulus Media, for example, lose their jobs because Rush Limbaugh's making $50 million less one year, but fewer people are hearing Rush, I don't know what the answer is. I don't know what the balance is. What's the break-even point?
Seems impossible to determine.
Yeah, but in any case, earnings were released today by Cumulus Media, and profit is down there, and that is connected in part with the Rush Limbaugh boycott. Incredible. Let's go to your voicemail, 219-2-DAVID-P. Here's a voicemail that I think is pretty funny. Take a listen to this.
Yo, David P., it's Patty D. from Minneapolis. Just want to call and say thank you for using my question, or kind of reply to the South Korean thing, which just, I just can't say it without even not laughing. But I just thank you. It's really exciting for me and my wife. I love showing her that I made the show, and it's just really cool. I just love watching your show, and I really appreciate it, and wish you all the best, and yeah, I can't wait to wear my bumper sticker. And then, of course, more importantly, what about Benghazi?
That's really the question I have with every voicemail I get. Who changed the talking points on Benghazi? Who told Susan Rice?
Let's stay focused here.
Yeah, I'm sorry. And here's another voicemail about some interesting ads that are running on some of our videos on YouTube.
David P. and you guys are so conservative. I just watched a few of your videos on YouTube, and more than once, I have to tell you that Mitch McConnell's ads came up on your watch this ad for 5 seconds and then clicked your video. Anyway, just thought you would like to know that.
That is interesting. During the 2012 election, when we were here in Massachusetts, we would constantly get Scott Brown ads popping up on YouTube because they were really heavily targeting YouTube for Scott Brown voters. If Mitch McConnell wants to spend money advertising to people watching our show, that's his deal, And I think more than likely, Mitch McConnell is doing YouTube buys that cover the entire news and politics spectrum, and you don't have individual control. Although I'm not sure, maybe he or we could block his specific ads, but we'll take his money. I don't think he's going to convince too many people.
I think taking his money is a good thing, but what about Benghazi?
Yeah, I know. I know we keep getting distracted, and I want to get back to that. We'll talk about Benghazi tomorrow.
Okay.
DavidPakman.com/May13. I know you've been waiting to become a David Pakman Show member because you were waiting for a good offer. We now have one. You can take your pick or have both. A free David Pakman Show bumper sticker. These are not available anywhere right now. Some people got them with the Indiegogo campaign. You can't buy them. You either got it with the Indiegogo campaign or you've got to get it through this special. And a 1,000-piece Barack Obama puzzle. You can go on davidpakman.com/May13. You pick just the bumper sticker, just the puzzle, or both. They ship free. We send them to you for free. You pay nothing for those items. If you prefer a David Pakman Show t-shirt, we also have an offer up on that page where you can choose a t-shirt. We will see you tomorrow. That's all I have for today, Lewis. Excellent show coming up tomorrow. Glad you're with us. See you at 2 p.m. Eastern.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.